After being removed from a flight because of her hijab, a Muslim woman sets out to change an entire industry. How does one woman's fight against discrimination spark a revolution in air travel? Keep watching to find out. You've probably heard stories about discrimination before, but this one is different. It's not just about a passenger being treated unfairly. It's about a battle against deep-rooted biases that could happen to any of us, no matter where we come from. Let me tell you about Amina. Amina had always loved to travel. The idea of seeing new places, meeting people from different cultures, and experiencing life beyond her city was something she looked forward to. She worked hard, saved up, and planned every trip with excitement. But little did she know that her dream vacation would soon turn into a nightmare. All right, now hit the subscribe button for more interesting stories. Let's continue. It started like any other flight. Amina had booked her ticket well in advance and was excited to head to her destination. She'd packed her things, checked in, and found her seat on the plane. As she settled in, she could feel the usual sense of excitement, the little rush you get before a journey. She had no reason to believe that anything was going to go wrong. But as the flight prepared to take off, something unexpected happened. A passenger sitting near her started to stare. Not just a quick glance. This was different. The look was intense, almost uncomfortable. Amina tried to ignore it, thinking it was just a coincidence. She'd seen people give odd looks before, but this felt different. Then, it happened. The passenger, a middle-aged man dressed in a suit, stood up and made his way to the flight attendant. He was clearly upset, speaking loudly and waving his arms. Amina couldn't hear the exact words, but she saw the flight attendant nod, her expression tense. Then, the flight attendant turned and walked over to Amina's seat. "Excuse me, ma'am, we need to ask you to leave the plane," the flight attendant said. Amina froze. The flight attendant hesitated. "It's company policy. There's been a complaint and we need to remove you from the flight." Amina was stunned. She didn't know what to say. She hadn't done anything wrong. In fact, she had been sitting quietly, not bothering anyone. As the realization hit her, it was clear that this wasn't about a policy violation. It was about something much deeper. A complaint had been made by the man sitting nearby. He had claimed that Amina made him uncomfortable. But Amina knew exactly why. She was Muslim, wearing a hijab. And for some people, that alone was enough to make her a target. The flight attendant told her to gather her things. She was escorted off the plane, not because of anything she had done, but because of who she was. And as Amina stepped off that plane, she knew her journey wasn't just about her flight anymore. It was about something much bigger, something that could change how the world saw people like her. What happened next was even more shocking. The news of what happened spread quickly. Amina's story went viral. People everywhere were outraged. Social media erupted with messages of support and calls for accountability. People from all walks of life came forward, sharing their own stories of discrimination and how they had been made to feel like outsiders just because of their appearance or their beliefs. But it wasn't just the public that was angry. Inside the airline, employees began to question what had happened. Was this really the company they worked for? Were they really okay with treating a passenger this way, just because of her religion? The airline tried to brush it off, but the pressure grew. People weren't going to let this slide. The company's social media pages were flooded with demands for justice. Employees spoke out, and soon, even major news outlets picked up the story. The world was watching, and the airline knew they couldn't hide anymore. The company had a choice: stand by their actions and risk losing everything, or admit their mistake and work to fix the damage they had done. It wasn't an easy decision. The airline's reputation was on the line, but the backlash was too much to ignore. So the airline made an unprecedented move. They publicly apologized to Amina and offered her a chance to speak with them about what had happened. But more than that, they pledged to overhaul their policies and provide better training for their staff on how to deal with diversity and inclusivity. It was clear they needed to change, both internally and externally. But the real twist? Amina wasn't just going to be a victim in this story. She wasn't going to let the airline's apology be the end of it. She saw this as an opportunity, not just for herself, but for others who had faced similar discrimination. And while it seemed like a small victory for Amina, It was the beginning of something much bigger, something that would change how airlines, and perhaps the world, treated people who were different. Amina wasn't going to let the apology be the end of her story. She was determined to turn this moment into something bigger than just an apology from one airline. What happened to her on that plane wasn't just an isolated incident. It was part of a much larger pattern of discrimination that too many people faced every day. Amina started speaking out, not just about her own experience, but about the struggles faced by countless others who had been treated unfairly because of their race, religion, or appearance. She became a voice for those who had been silenced by prejudice. Through social media, interviews, and public speaking, she made sure the world knew this wasn't just about her. It was about making sure that no one else would have to go through what she did. And the more she spoke, the more people began to listen. Her story sparked conversations about how deeply ingrained bias and discrimination still were in many parts of society, including in industries like aviation. She was no longer just a passenger on a plane. She was a leader in the fight for fairness and equality. Soon, her calls for change were being heard by more than just the public. The airline, facing growing pressure from its customers, employees, and even legal authorities, realized they had to take real action. The company's top executives invited Amina to a meeting to discuss what could be done to prevent something like this from happening again. They knew they couldn't undo what had been done, but they could work to make sure that no one else was forced to leave a plane just because of their background. Amina didn't just accept the apology. She made sure the airline committed to real, lasting change. They agreed to implement new policies. First, they introduced mandatory diversity and sensitivity training for all employees. Every staff member, from flight attendants to pilots, would learn how to recognize their own biases and how to treat every passenger with the respect they deserved, no matter their appearance or beliefs. But Amina didn't stop there. She demanded that the airline go beyond just training. She pushed for the company to establish a clear, publicly accessible system for passengers to report discrimination without fear of retaliation. And she insisted that any incidents of discrimination be taken seriously, with a transparent process for handling complaints. Amina's impact didn't end with the airline. Her story spread far beyond that one company, igniting a firestorm of conversation across the entire aviation industry. Other airlines began to look closely at their own policies, and many followed the example set by the airline in question. They started looking at their own practices, hiring diverse staff, and ensuring that inclusivity wasn't just a buzzword, but a real priority. And just when it seemed like the story might die down, something unexpected happened. Amina was invited to speak at conferences, join advocacy groups, and even sit on advisory boards for major organizations. Her voice had become a powerful tool for change, and the world was starting to listen. As the months passed, the airline's reputation began to change. They worked hard to restore trust with their customers and employees, proving that they were serious about creating a safer, more inclusive environment for everyone who flew with them. While some customers continued to criticize the company, many others respected the steps they had taken to make things right. But the most significant change came when Amina was invited to help create a new standard for the entire airline industry. With her experience, knowledge, and passion, she was appointed to an advisory board that worked with governments, advocacy groups, and major companies to establish new guidelines for how passengers should be treated. Amina's fight wasn't just about one incident on a plane. It was about changing the narrative for an entire industry. She had turned her personal pain into a force for good, and her determination had sparked a movement that would be felt for years to come. And as she stood at the podium, addressing a packed room of industry leaders, Amina looked out and felt a sense of pride. The fight hadn't been easy, and the road had been long, but she knew that every step, every word, every call for justice had been worth it. She had turned her moment of humiliation into a movement of empowerment. Her message to the world was simple. Don't let anyone make you feel less than you are. Stand up for what's right, no matter the cost. Change starts with one person, and that person could be you. Amina's story was a testament to the power of resilience. She had shown the world that one individual, even in the face of unfairness, could spark a change that would ripple through an entire industry. It wasn't just about a single moment of injustice. It was about using that moment to create something that would protect future generations. And in the end, it proved that courage isn't just about standing up for yourself. It's about standing up for others too. And when enough people stand together, the world starts to change.